The following podcast contains explicit language. You're listening to the Cinematography Podcast presented by Hot Rod Cameras, a program about the art, craft, and philosophy of the moving image and the people who make it happen. Coming to you from the world headquarters of Hot Rod Cameras in Hollywood, California, are your hosts, Ben Rock and Illya Friedman.
Welcome to the Cinematography Podcast, episode number 13.
It's Lucky 13, everybody.
Lucky us.
I'm Ben Rock.
And I'm Illya Friedman.
Hey, and Illya, we have a new sponsor today, don't we?
We do. We are very fortunate to have Ayers.
Classy
Ayers, 100-year-old company, as new sponsor of the podcast.
They're basically the gold standard in everything they do.
Yes, absolutely. Academy Award-winning movies and their cameras, their lenses, their accessories are the stuff of legend. They are the systems that which filmmakers use to make their movies. I mean, there's very few people in that same company, in the same, I would say, strata as Ayers. They're really impressive.
Little point of trivia, I learned in film school, the first camera that I had, I didn't have personally, but the first camera I learned anything on was the then brand new Ayers SR2.
Wow.
With coaxial magazines.
Oh, yeah. I loaded a lot of those magazines back in the 90s on music videos in San Francisco.
Well, and then later the SR3, which I always thought was pretty sexy.
But,
But they've come a long way.
They certainly have. And the Alexa and the Alexa Mini and all of the different camera technology that they have right now really does sort of set the gold standard. I mean, certainly if you look at the number of people who are using their gear, it's incredible.
So their slogan should be literally Ayers. We shouldn't have to tell you anything more about ourselves because you know who we are already.
You know, they have a really good website, but they kind of don't. They really don't have to tell very much. And in fact, there's sort of amongst us in the industry who deal with the gear and the technical side for a living, you know that something is going to work and be very solid when it has the Ayers name on it. And some products come out and it almost doesn't matter what they charge for it. It's an Ayers, so people buy it. People love it.
Absolutely. So we're recording this, everybody. I want you to know how hardcore we are. It's a little bit after midnight, and it's the day before Illya goes off to NAB. It's 20:01 a.m. on the day that Illya goes to the National Association of Broadcasters convention.
Yeah, if any of you watched the video that I posted last year, which was basically all about me hating NAB, I still feel that way. I don't care for this convention, but it is necessary. It's it is necessary.
I love NAB. I just don't like Las Vegas personally, and I've learned the secret if you're based in Los Angeles, and that's if you wait a month, you can go to Cinegear and see everything that you would have seen at NAB.
Yeah, that's pretty much true. Yeah, 6 weeks later, you can go to Cinegear. And there's actually a mini Cinegear now, too, which is called the JBL Fisher Event. It takes place with only about 20 vendors, but Hot Rod Cameras will be there.
Oh, that's cool.
And that happens this year, I think, on May 20th, which is Saturday. And that event is free, and it is a barbecue, and they supply, beer. It's an ice cream. It is they do, a whole to-do.
So they have barbecue-flavored ice cream? I stumped Illya. That's perfect. Okay, so moving on. Sometimes at this point we'll do NAB predictions, but weirdly, I think a lot of companies have already said what they're going to be revealing at NAB, and in fact, Adobe has already released the new version of the Creative Cloud. I can download it now.
Wow, I guess that means I can download it too. We use Adobe to edit this show.
Adobe, who should sponsor us.
They really should. Anyway, do you want to do NAB predictions? I think it's all kind of out there right now. Anyone with a internet connection can basically find out what's happening at NAB. I mean, there's a lot of new lenses. There's a bunch of new LED lights.
To me, NAB, and I know we always talk about this, it's there's always a theme every year. I remember one year it was 3D, and that died 1,000 deaths. What's going to be the big theme? Virtual reality? What's the theme?
Yeah, definitely more VR. And now you're hearing VR thrown into the same sentence as VR, AR, and mixed reality. So virtual reality, augmented reality, and now mixed reality, which, yes, there is a definition for mixed reality, but I've now heard 2 or 3 different people give me different ones. But the concept is that someone who is not in virtual reality can see someone else experiencing virtual reality. I know. Strange.
Freaky. So mixed reality might be a fun term for us to explore in the future. here's something to talk about. We've talked a little bit about virtual reality. I did an episode of 20 Seconds to Live, which is still not released, which we shot in VR.
You're going to release it on Vimeo? They now have a 360 viewing mode.
We will probably release it on Vimeo. Thing is that we've partnered with a company called Sika TV to release our episodes. And so I don't know if Sika has a VR viewer yet. To me, this is what I miss when, like this year, I am unable to go to NAB. And it's to kind of figure out it's not really what the zeitgeist is, because the zeitgeist emerges on its own. It's to figure out what the companies want the zeitgeist to be, which is more of what you're going to actually encounter at NAB than what the actual zeitgeist truly is itself.
Yeah, I think that HDR, again, will be another big topic of discussion, and I think that will start to permeate the zeitgeist, because I'm already seeing the consumer sets that now say HDR ready. Oh, it's HDR ready.
And that's high dynamic range.
Dynamic range, exactly. And it's interesting because the camera manufacturers, thankfully, have not really jumped on that bandwagon, but the truth of the matter is if you've got a camera that's doing 13 stops at dynamic range, you have an HDR camera that you've already got it. And it depends on how it's going to be posted, and depending whether or not they're sending the encoding correctly to your television set through your streaming service or your cable company or your Blu-ray player, or whatever it is.
I don't want to watch things in high dynamic range. Is that what people are wanting to do? Like, I want to look at it in the exact dynamic range that the filmmakers intended, which is usually like color correction is often about compressing the dynamic range.
Yeah, so now that there's HDR, there's also SDR, which stands for standard dynamic range. So it's not just, dynamic range and high dynamic range, it's standard dynamic range.
Does this mean that like we're going to be watching television shows and everything's just going to be super flat looking?
No, high dynamic range does not mean flat. High dynamic range means you're going to have a higher spread in nits and brightness between your brightest white and your darkest black. I mean, your contrast just now has gone in much, much higher, because they're basically saying this area of the screen, you can now be brighter. Can be brighter. There's something to be said that color could see a benefit from this as well. But really what we're talking about is brightness levels and how bright and saturated and bright these different shades and regions of the screen is. It's interesting because it was such strict quality control for theaters for a very, very long time, and that's going to change. That people are now going to have, they're now going to make it so certain areas of the screen pop, certain areas of the screen are brighter. And I don't know if filmmakers really want that, but they're convinced that consumers do, and I think that there's a lot of confusion, and most consumers don't even know what the hell this is.
Well, I'm going to, in honor of my birthday, I'm going to try not to be a crotchety old man about it and try and keep an open mind and see it when it comes down the pike.
That you can do. I have a feeling that it's probably in Best Buy now, even though it's probably not set up and being displayed properly.
Best Buy? I only go to Circuit City. I know it's been closed for 10 years. I just stand outside and scream at the walls.
There is that former Circuit City just down the road from you, too.
It is, yeah.
Now a thrift store.
Well, cool. So you'll enjoy NAB. I'll enjoy my birthday, then my wife's birthday, then my anniversary, which is why I really shouldn't be going to NAB this year.
All right. So, Ben, who's on the show today?
On the show today is Roman Vas'yanov, who is an amazing cinematographer. And as we said in the last episode, unfortunately very young, and so we're recording this, it's actually my birthday now, and so I'm feeling kind of old right now. And when I met him, I'm like, young son of a bitch. And then it's like, then when we got talking to him, as you'll hear in the interview, that guy has some serious training from a Russian film school that is kind of many leaps and bounds beyond anything you'll find in America. And his level of experience is amazing, and I think his insight into the work that he does is inspirational.
Years don't matter compared to the miles, I think, sometimes. I mean, it's
the Malcolm Gladwell 10,000 hour thing, and he went to a school where I feel like they put 10,000 hours on all of their students, and then I'm not going to ruin his story. It's fascinating. I'm not going to go into any more detail until he does it himself. So, Illya, also, we have a new piece of news. We have a new member of the Cinematography Podcast family, correct?
I am so happy and thrilled to report this, but we have an editor.
We have an editor. As happy as you are to report it, I'm even happier because I've edited all oh my God, 12 episodes of this up until now. And it's been like 12 episodes in hell. But now we have a fella.
Yeah, we do.
Named Mike Willbanks.
And he's in Texas.
He's in Texas, and he's been editing this stuff, and he's a fan of the podcast and a super nice guy. And
kicking butt already.
Yeah. No, he edited the Roman Vas'yanov interview, and I was a little afraid to let it out of my grubby hands like the Precious. Like, oh, no, somebody else is editing, and they're going to screw it all up. And then I listened to his edit, and I was like, that's fucking brilliant. And I didn't have to do any of it. And so we're hoping, crossing our fingers, that having Mike Willbanks in the Cinematography Podcast family will enable us to at least churn these episodes out a little bit faster than we have at the glacial. Glaciers move faster than we release episodes.
All right. So without further ado, Roman Vas'yanov.
The Cinematography Podcast interview.
I'm here at Hot Rod Cameras in Hollywood, California with Roman Vas'yanov. Welcome.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you very much for coming out. Before we even start, could you tell me where people can find you? Do you have Instagram, Twitter, your own website, where people can find your information?
Well, I do have a website, which is romanvasyanov.com, or you can follow me on Instagram, Roman Vas'yanov DOP. That's where I usually put my photos, my pictures I took with my still camera.
Like fun pictures or artistic or?
Kind of just fun when I somewhere like in some faraway land doing some commercials and I'm wandering around and take photos, or something from projects I've done, some still photos, because for me photography I think is the only like kind of form I constantly enjoying, and I think it's kind of like a stress-free. Yeah, because I think movie business cinema, it's also like process of taking photos in a way, but like making visuals, but it's way much more stressful than photography.
Yeah, when you're taking a picture, there isn't usually an AD asking you how long it was going to take you to hit the shutter.
Yeah, exactly. It's just kind of enjoyable moment.
So let's start with your origin story, if you will. Sorry, superhero movie joke. Let's start with how you got started. When did you start seeing that cinematography or camera work was a thing you wanted to pursue?
Well, when I was growing up, my dad was a photographer, and he worked for a couple like Soviet magazines, and basically I was around him and he was constantly taking photos. And when I was, I think, 15 years old, accidentally in the same like apartment building where I was living with my dad, his friend was one like Soviet cinematographer. They basically borrow lenses from each other, and that's how I found out that the whole like cinematography exists in a way. And on a certain point, I was like thinking what I want to do, and basically that neighbor told me, "Oh, you should try it. Maybe you should try to pick your dad's camera and try to go around take photos, and maybe he can go and become a cinematographer." And I was like, that sounds interesting. Movies, I always loved movies, and I watched a lot of movies when I was a kid, and that's what I did basically. I took
what kind of stuff are they? I don't understand or know what's going on in the Soviet Union. In like what year are we talking about? Like in the 80s?
Well, I was born 1980, so the Soviet Union kind of fell apart in 1991. So I was 11 years old, and when it was Soviet Union, it was only like Soviet movies, and like you watch a lot of like World War II movies. When you're a kid, you watch a lot of all kinds of like dramas. Or
so did American movies or European movies make it there at all?
Or sometimes like Italian movies, like Bernardo Bertolucci. Actually, Conformist was I have not seen it unfortunately, but I read later that because he was a pro-communist Italian kind of artist, he had a chance to show his movie in Soviet Union, but actually they took the movie and they dubbed it in Russian, and they didn't tell him that basically they cut out the sex scene, like the famous like erotic scene in the beginning of the movie, because it was like forbidden to show. And he arrived in the Moscow Film Festival and saw his movie completely like dubbed and recut it. So so he was very angry about it. And actually I saw that movie later on in my film school, because they still got that copy of The Conformist.
Oh no.
Yeah, and actually the most funny thing about it, that they have two copies. One copy was in color, which it was actually the way it was shot. It also was in black and white, because for some reason it was like cheaper to like make more copies out of it. So basically poor Bernardo Bertolucci saw probably the movie he never really shot.
Here's your movie, unlike anything that you had ever approved of.
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, it was a lot of movies, and then after the like metal curtain fell, and was a lot of like content coming from a lot of movies and coming from West. and that's basically where I start watching like Scorsese movies and all the great American classic movies from 70s. And I really sort of loved because I think Russian cinema has like Soviet cinema has an amazing history, like with
they kind of invented cinema.
Like with Eisenstein movies or with Tarkovsky movies or with Bondarchuk movies like War and Peace. I think when you teenager, like when you're 15, 16, it's really hard to sort of really understand them. It's actually sort of I feel the whole Soviet education system was like over educating kids, like because in the school program when you're 14 you gotta like read War and Peace or like Anna Karenina, and reality is like I actually reread those books when I was like 31 and I kind of got them, you know what I mean? It's really hard when you 15 to understand.
It's always weird to think that like when you're the literature that's like forced down your throat in school was actually just popular literature of its time, even like Shakespeare. It's like that was the popular.
It's like amazing literature. That's why it stays over the centuries and become like a classic literature. It's just sometimes like you got to be ready for your mind has to be ready for certain books, and I don't think my mind was ready in that time to like really enjoy an amazing Soviet sort of movies. That's why I kind of was like happy to watch like a lot of American movies like Casino and like Raging Bull, and because for me it was also entertaining as well. That's I think what's the Hollywood movies about. It's a great dramas, but it's extremely interesting to watch. And then later on you watch like Mirror, Tarkovsky, which is extremely sort of an impressionistic cinematic experience, but you're only getting it much later in your life, what it's all about.
So by the time that the Soviet Union collapses and you're able to get all these movies, were you already on a path to become a filmmaker yourself?
I try to like pass exam. We have this sort of a filmist university in Moscow, and it's really hard to get in because it's not you cannot just pay for education. So it's only like 15 students can get in every year, and it's pretty big competitions, like around 50 people for each.
Oh wow!
Yeah. So and you basically gotta like take photos, create your own portfolio. First you apply with your portfolio, then you like pass several exams. Like when I was passing some like chemistry and physics, because you should like understand how to make developers and like have to understand structure of the film and optics and all that stuff. So it was quite tricky.
Even as that stuff is like going out, like even as that stuff
just to get in.
Wow.
So that was quite tricky. That's why I tried twice and I only passed the exam on the second time. And lucky enough, my master and the teacher of that year was a very famous kind of Soviet cinematographer. He's a guru in my opinion, who shot all Tarkovsky movies starting from Childhood of Ivan until Solaris and Andrei Rublev, which I think is a total masterpiece. And this is how I get in there. And I think the atmosphere, the film school took about 5 years. And it was very like an army experience in a way, because he was, Vadim Yusuf, my teacher, he was very about discipline. He never really like just like this kind of creativity and be creative. He was always like about you should like learn how to expose film properly, how to develop film. And we had our own lab in the film school, so we were always playing with the developing time and all kinds of stuff. And we first 2 years we never really even met any director, so we're supposed to shoot our own sort of a little short films without music and sound, just against like a room with a gray walls. One is a black and white, the other in color, and just try to play just with light and gels in the light, just to learn light. And it's a very sort of a ascetic way, I think, to compare what's happening like on the rest of the film schools all around the world. And it has like maybe some minus, because you kind of a little bit in yourself, but at the same time I felt like that's an amazing sort of a training just for cinematography, because I think you becoming stronger filmmaker first of all, and then you're very crafted. So basically I will start shooting like short films. Even I shot my first feature film when I was 22 years old.
Oh wow.
And I had zero problems with like all the technical aspects of the filmmaking. Really was
And that was after you had already done that program?
After like on my fifth year of education.
5 years of that.
Yeah.
And it was 5 years of specifically cinematography. It's not
2 years just specifically cinematography, and then you start working little by little with the directors from directors department.
Yeah.
And
but like you weren't in like the film school that I went to. We're all in one giant program, and then you'd have a cinematography
it's
class
like
or whatever.
we even had like a different sort of levels in our building. Like first level was like cinematography, second level was directors, third level was actors, and the fourth level was production designers. So in the funny thing, when you get in the fourth level, you see all this painting pictures everywhere. So basically those guys were like painting pictures for like 3 years.
Oh my God.
And the reality is, like, again, the bad side of it, that there maybe a lot of guys never really even made in the industry because they were so concentrated on paintings. But some guys who made it, they an amazing production designers. Like one of my friends, he's right now working with very, I think, contemporary, probably the best director in Russia, Andrei Zvyagintsev, and he does like Leviathan and all the movies together. And he's an amazing production designer who paints and like has own paintings and stuff. It's I think it's, as I said, it's like it's a cool program. It's very different for everything else, but I definitely right now, after the years, I see advantage of that as well.
Yeah, it sounds like they really drilled you and just kind of
exactly.
like
That's and if you're not drilling, really, they don't like leave you there. So it's
that's interesting though. I mean, it's really interesting, just because I feel like what I think film school in America doesn't do very well is kind of get you used to anything that gets thrown at you. But to a degree, it's like you kind of just learn the basics, and then you get to make a bunch of films, and then they pat you on your ass and give you a diploma and goodbye, good luck.
Yeah.
And like 2 or 3 of the students from any given program end up working in the industry, I think.
Right.
It sounds like, like what you went through, it's by the time you got done with that, it sounds like...
Yeah, well, like from these 15 guys who've been in my class, like 10 right now are working as a pretty like good cinematographers, and they're busy and work in the industry. Yeah, I think it's because it's university support by government. It's not really a business structure. Like there's no like really idea of like, okay, let's get as many students as possible. It's like it's the other way around, basically. It's like
the anti-full sale.
So I think
sorry, full sale students who many of whom I know very well.
I think it's all about talent in the end of the day, and if the person has a talent and a passion and he's hardworking, he can make out of any system.
Of course.
Yeah.
So what was the name of the cinematographer who worked with Tarkovsky?
Is Vadim Yusuf. He shot, like I said, Childhood of Ivan and Andrei Rublev and Solaris.
Is he still teaching there?
No, unfortunately, he died like 3 years ago, and he had a huge sort of it's interesting. Right before he died, he went to Kamry Mash, and he had like 2 weeks there, was like surrounded by students and showing his movies, and it's a kind of shame because in my opinion he definitely deserved like an Oscar or Academy Award nomination for some of his work, but because of the regime and the metal curtain between our countries, he never even had a chance to be nominated for anything, really.
Did he shoot any movies in Europe? Or?
No, because like by the time the sort of a Soviet Union collapsed, he was already like 70 something. So it's hard. And I think after the Soviet system of filmmaking, it was really hard sort of a transition to like modern way how people right now make movies. And it's completely two different discipline. And I think that's why myself and my friends who graduated from that school in that period of time had opportunity to start shoot very early, just because it was like a generation change in a way of people who used to do things in the old way and people who's ready to do things in a new way, more like a producer's movie, like cinema.
So do you think that the stuff you learned in that program, like still to this day, influences like how you go about approaching your work? Like if you could summarize the discipline that they taught you, how would you describe it?
Well, definitely. I mean, it was very like deep knowledge into optics and structure of lenses. We were like building our own like lenses together with our teachers and from glass, and creating like very simple lenses like Auteurs and like very when it's just one lens and one lens and one glass lens. And definitely in the film, like we had the lab, and I was using densitometer to put like all the curves. And I remember when I was doing my first movie in Los Angeles, and the post-production was in film with Beverly, and we talk about film, I feel like she's very like, wow, because I think she didn't really expect for such a young man to be so knowledgeable about what she does with like all the developing process and stuff. Right now it's all kind of going away just because the film is going away, but in the same time I feel the knowledge of how really, you know, it all works very helpful, because even these days, you know, I just done show with Doug Lyman on Super 16 and Suicide Squad shot on a 35mm anamorphic and Fury with 35mm anamorphic. So, you know, I still find it very useful even today, like that knowledge I got. And of course, we also been taught a lot of history of art, and we had like drawing classes when we were trying to draw like some storyboards ourselves.
That is amazing, though. I really think that sounds like I think more film schools could learn from that.
Well, I think the Lodz Film School in Poland, I think they kind of like trying to be in that sort of a system of education. I think it's fantastic for cinematography. I'm not sure if it's great for directors, because I think the whole idea of really like educate directors is a little tricky, you know, like the more work I'm in industry, the more I'm finding that a lot of interesting guys coming from script writing or acting, or, you know, like I think directing is really hard to really learn how to direct. You can learn like the basic things, but it doesn't really make you a good director, you know. And as opposite to cinematography, because it's in the level, it's a craft. So if you learn craft very well, then you put in talent on top, you can really achieve something. But if you know, maybe not so talented, but you still got a craft, you still can be very good, you know. So that's, I think, the huge difference between directing and cinematography in a way, you know.
Do you know how they taught the directors in that program?
Well, directors just been, you know, it's a lot of script writing, sort of with script writers together, like developing, and a lot of, they have to also work like more like in a theater. So they can take actors from acting department and create basically plays, like, because Bergman and Tarkovsky, they're heavily involved in the theater as well. And I think that's quite useful. Looking at it right now, I think it's an amazing educational process. I think it's really like make you much more deeper person than you are, much more smarter person than you are. But I don't think it's a crucial thing for to be a good director, because I think it's a total different, like, it's just a talent, it's a magic in a way, you know what I mean? It's crazy. It's like, that's why we got so many great DPs or editors or writers and so few great directors, you know.
Well, the directors rely on people like you to make them look good.
You know? but yes and no, because in the same time you can only be Chivo or Vadim Yusuf or Roger Deakins if you work with an amazing director, because you can shoot beautifully bad movie and nothing gonna change in your life. You can shoot pretty ordinary great movie and your life can change. So that's an unfortunate fact about this job.
That's so true. That's insane. That's great. So I have a couple of sort of stock questions. I'm going to invert them for you because I feel like what you were just talking about kind of dovetails into one of the things I always want to ask about, which is the director-DP relationship. Answer this however you want. I don't have any expectation. If you could build a director in a laboratory to work with you perfectly, what would that director work like? What would that relationship be?
You know, the interesting thing is, like, I'm very open to any kind of a relationship from a director. I can even take like a huge level of like bad behavior if I feel that behind that there's a talent and there's a passion and hardworking, and you know, it's okay to be a mad person, because I don't think really like a normal person can do that job. So I don't take it as an abuse or something like that. I feel like it's fine, you know, let's move on, let's make an amazing movie. I can take a lot of it if I know the result will be great. But if at the end result is not great, I usually not even continue work with this person, because then it's not worth it. What I find for myself personally, just like through my life, I have sort of a great relationship with writers. Like in Russia, one of my biggest movie I've done was Hipsters. It's a musical about 1950s in Soviet Union, and actually director, he was a writer originally. And I think because what I like when I work with a director, I'm okay if if I know, like, you know, when you work with an amazing visual director, like, I don't know, James Cameron, David Fincher, you should just kind of shut up, take your light meter and do what they say, because reality is they are geniuses in a way, and actually they're hiring you to be that way because they don't want to waste time of like explaining things. But I think there's also around a lot of an amazing talented people who need a certain help to open up and make the best movie possible. So for me, that's really what I feel like. That's kind of what I love to do. It's work with people who's very strong in certain things, and they need a more of a collaborator than just a guy who does what they say. And I think that's my strongest work coming even out of it. And I think I found actually that in Europe, that's very common. Like whatever you work in Russia or in Europe, that cinematographer is a kind of right hand, and him and director sharing ideas about script or ideas about some. And in America, I think because it's a lot of also like a business involved, a lot of times, especially in the beginning, I found that directors feel very insecure as cinematographer, very part of like, you know, discussion of the script. So you have to kind of build quite for a long time like a shorthand relationship, so they don't consider it as some sort of a way you want to step out and be in director or something like that.
Yeah.
You know, which I think is a quite, you know, insecure and not very smart, because the reality is like whoever you work with an amazing person, it can be a deal production designer. And again, from my personal life experience, usually the best ones, they not just care about their jobs, they're filmmakers. They care how to make the final movie as amazing as possible. So I personally love to work either with very, very talented people who I just listen and you know, do what they ask, or I love also when, you know, like for example, our relationship with David, or I just worked with Jason Hall, who is a scriptwriter of American Sniper. I did his first movie for DreamWorks.
Oh, nice.
And it was an amazing experience because Jason, it's his first movie, but I can see guy has a hell of a talent. He will be probably one of the best contemporary directors. I hope. I mean, at least I felt like he has that, you know. That's but great. You just need to like just a little help with some craft things, like with some maybe even technical things, if you want to say.
Yeah.
And you know, I usually more than happy to do that and take that responsibility, and I think that's actually my job.
Well, I sometimes wonder if, like, I feel like in film schools and in film culture in America, I don't know how it is in the rest of the world necessarily, there's this abusive idea of auteur theory that's actually overbearing on directors, where they feel like every idea has to be theirs.
Well, I think it comes from because what they look at the top of the game people like Cameron, like Fincher, like Spielberg, like Lucas, or like Scorsese, and those guys, they're very self, like, you know, they're sort of a very, they're happy to make movie. Like I heard from people who work with James Cameron, he actually was happy if there will be no one else around and he can do everything himself. So
I've always heard that he could fire literally anyone on the entire crew and do their job better.
He knows everybody's job better than people do, and it's amazing. But the reality is, like, again, like example which is happening in front of us. Everybody who's watching HBO for past like months, we're watching The Night Off, which is an amazing TV show shot and directed by Steven Zalian, who's been scriptwriter, an amazing scriptwriter. But before they had a couple feature films which were great, but not as successful and as great as The Night Off. Yeah. And so it just says that, it's hard to make even a good movie sometimes, and sometimes circumstances of actually playing a huge part in it. And I think my job as a cinematographer, trying to protect director and help director to be on top of his game as much as he only can. And I think, and then of course concentrate on my own job as well. But the more you concentrate on your own job as well, you understand without a shorthand and relationship with director, you can't really do your job, because that's the reason why, you know, Emmanuel Lubezki won 3 Oscars with his film school friends. You know? Both of them, they know each other since years, because you cannot fight the studio and say, hey, we're gonna shoot a minute a day in a magic hour without directing supporting you. You know, you just simply cannot do it. You'll be fired next day. So the more you coming to the point of like who I am and what I want to do, and I have these images and ideas about visuals, the more you need it to be a brother next to you, a director who trusts you, and at the same time that director will benefit as well because you're friends, and you know you will never let him down. So that's why every director I work, like David Ayer, and I hope Jason Hall, and you know, I just did a movie with Doug Lyman. That was an amazing experience. I feel like it's very close relationship first of all, and then I think because of that, I think we do some fun stuff.
Interesting. So the other very stock question I ask, but I love the different answers that we get from people, is I tend to think that cinematographers either think of a composition and light into that composition, or think of the lighting and find a composition in the lighting. They're like starting with lighting or starting with composition. And granted, there are plenty of people who are neither or both. But what are your thoughts about that? Where do you start?
I started myself more from lighting, and then I've changed to composition, because I think the great shot can tell much more than the lighting. So it's great when you begin your career and you're learning how to light. It's fantastic to sort of sometimes you have to frame for lighting. There's no choice, especially if you use like big sources, or if you kind of stuck with tight spaces. You have to consider your lighting when you do frame. But more you do this work, the more you understand that actually the power of the shot, of the composition, is sometimes much stronger than the lighting idea. So right now I try to concentrate first of all what kind of a shot I want, and then I try to understand how the best way I can light it. And of course sometimes it's a compromise either way, but I think for me composition right now comes first, just because I feel like that's the way to go, and the camera language is more importantly than the lighting. And if you experience it good enough, then the lighting will come as well.
So when you're reading a script, are you thinking of it as a series of compositions, or are you imagining the compositions?
I try to, like, when I read a script, I try to understand what it's all about, and I think about just the visual language generally first, like what I want to feel from camera, what kind of a camera I want to use, because I'm a big believer in bold choices. And I think the whole great cinematography movies, when you see, they usually have those bold choices, either with lighting or with visual language or with some sort of a film processing on the look of the movie. So I try to understand like what I would how I would love to approach this movie from that point of view first, and then scene by scene you kind of start feeling what scene requires what camera language and lighting language. But the lighting language sometimes comes also from a lot of things, like, if your director is really the person who commit to some sort of a coverage, or your director is a guy who comes and change things, and you got to be ready to look like 360 degrees, and there's nothing wrong with both approaches. They're all talented, and a lot of talented people work in both. Like, some directors very visual and very dedicated to certain shots, and some directors, they just show up and try to figure it out and do an amazing movies as well. So it depends on a lot of things. But when I read the script, I first try to figure out like what's the visuals of this movies, and then I continue like kind of bit by bit.
This is something that I always want to hear from people. Where does the visual language come from when you're reading the script and you're thinking, for instance, I want to shoot this on long lenses and I want to use this color? And I think
it's a feeling. It's the truth is you never feel anything, or it's hard to understand how to shoot the movie only if it's a bad script. As soon as you got a great script, you always see the movie because you feel something, and when you feel something, that's where your idea comes out. And that's the problem. That's why I think, personally myself, I'm not a great shooter of movies which don't mean anything, because for me it's hard to kind of like put myself on the edge of like emotional excitement and emotional. I just show up to do my job, and again, there's nothing wrong with that, because sometimes we all know it happens in our lives. Just we got to work, But I know that it's not my best work, just because I need to feel something. So then I can come up with some crazy ideas, and usually it comes from the script. That's why I think the more and more movies and content around us these days, the more sort of the price and the value of a great script is more important, because reality is cinematography is an amazing tool, but it can't really make good movie or bad movie. Script is the only thing which it can make a great movie. So that's why great scripts, it's a golden thing. So
and so few of them.
It's so few of them, and everybody is hunting them, and that's that's how it is.
I'm going to use that to segue to your work with David Ayer. Obviously, well-known screenwriters started with Training Day, which is like
amazing
a
script,
touchstone movie. Like it's one of those movies I can't turn off.
Yeah.
So how do you first come in contact? Because your work with him was your first American movie,
and the
right?
watch. We just I after I've been signed by my agent Pete Franciosa and Robert R. Killian in United Talent Agency, they sent me the script basically, and the watch said, "Hey, there is no money."
How did they find you?
Well, I shot that musical, as I said, Hipsters, and it's been screened in Toronto Film Festival.
Got it.
It's been noticed there, and my director with whom I work basically got a proposal to sign with William Morrison agency, big agency, and his agent actually really loved my work, and he's like, "Oh, I know those agents," and then also I shot a commercial for Philips. It calls The Gift, which won Grand Prix Lion in Cannes, commercial Cannes competition, and it's all happened in the same year.
Oh wow!
So basically, when my agent got my 2 DVDs of a movie and a commercial, he thought it's like 2 different people because it was kind of different, very different material. And they just called me. Pete Franciosa called me like in 2 a.m. and said, "Hey, so you work, what are you doing?" And I just immediately felt that it's my chance. And I was in prep on another movie in Russia in that period, and I just like called producer, said, "Guys, I can't. I gotta basically pack my bags and move on." And that's what I did. And it's one of the things when something like that in your life happens, you just gotta go for it. Otherwise, you don't know. You know what I mean?
Was it your goal always to come out to America and make a?
I think I reached certain level in Russia where I wasn't like the best, but I was maybe like in 3-4 like the best DPs out there, and there clearly was like 3-4 good directors, and one already worked with me, second worked with me permanently, and 2 others never really had interest to work with me. So I kind of know I kind of reached the ceiling in a way. You know what I mean? So I felt like I gotta move on. I gotta do something just to develop myself to be better and better every day. You have to have challenges, and that's why I moved to United States and shot Underwatch, and in Russia I was making great money and working nonstop, and for me it was definitely a huge downshift. I rent like a tiny apartment and stuff, but it's worth it because I felt that it's a challenge and it's a great opportunity.
So before we even really get into your American work, let's talk about the kind of stuff that you did in Russia. You did a bunch of features, and you also did like over 300 commercials.
Yeah,
right?
commercials, a lot of commercials, because I was speaking English, and it was a lot of like foreign directors coming to Russia, and the market was booming, and basically it wasn't really like that many DPs who spoke English. I mean, so that's why I get proposals to work with all these great like foreign directors, and I shot a lot of commercials, and some of them won awards, international awards as well. And I always felt that no matter what, I want to try at least once, try to make a movie abroad and try to make a movie in Europe, or and as I said, I loved American movies, and I loved Hollywood movies, and I feel like it's always been that nice sort of a combination of art, and also it was always interesting, and audience driven movies, which I think is rare, because in Russia it's sort of a film festival orientated movies, which not necessarily interesting. I'm not very interested to just it's great to do it like couple projects like that, but after that you also understand that there is sort of a plan inside of those movies how to make them work for why they get like selected. It's like a whole thing, so on a certain point you just kind of get tired of it, and to be honest with you, for me, I don't really care about is the movie is for film festival or for it's a big box office blockbuster. For me, it's about, is it a good movie or not? And for me, the only really indicator is a good movie or not. Do I want to see it twice or no? And if I want to see the twice the movie, it means movie is fantastic. So I don't think I have shot movie like that yet, but that's my kind of dream and goal.
You don't think you've shot a movie that anyone would want to watch twice?
I myself,
I'll Fury or End of Watch, those are both brilliant.
Yeah, but I don't think I shot the movie. It's a good movie, but it's not like Schindler's List. It's not Flying Over Cuckoo's Nest. It's not that.
Schindler's List, by the way, kind of a bummer. Just I know it's a classic, but it's not a
Yeah, but for me, I think it's my dream is like just to shoot the movie. I mean, to be proud of, it's a little bit like kind of too much to say, but just a movie I think I feel like is something special.
Like a movie that really gets to people?
Yeah, like for example, no one saw but I think Foxcatcher 2 years ago, it's an incredible, it's a masterpiece.
Yeah,
and
it's
no
beautiful
one same thing like Will Be Blood, people PTA didn't win Oscar, nothing. It's like
no, but those movies are well known. I mean, I think that to this day, if you
it
drink your milkshake, at least in this town, everyone will get the joke.
No, of course. But what I'm saying is I'm just saying that this is the movie. If you're saying what I would love to shoot, this kind of movie, which not necessarily has to win all the awards or something, it's just a movie which means something. And because Will Be Blood, people were gonna watch in film schools,
Oh, for
10,
sure.
15 years. That will be forever. That's the art which gonna live longer than all of us. So I think that's
but
the goal.
on the flip side of that, though, by the way, a friend of mine got me into a screening of Mad Max Fury Road last year, and I was able to meet George Miller. And when I was in film school, we watched the Mad Max films, and we studied how they put together sequences. I think that there's an enormous amount that you can learn from a really brilliantly executed genre film.
I'm totally agree with you. When I was a kid, I remember when I was 13 years old, I watched Terminator 2 probably 7 times or something in the movie theater. It was completely mind-blowing experience. And I think it's definitely an amazing, Black Hawk Down, there are certain movies where, Munich, certain movies which are completely mind-blowing. But I still feel you get some Tarkovsky movies or Scorsese movies or I think Bennett Miller definitely getting in that league little by little, but with very powerful movies. I think that's something that's a top notch. You know what I mean? It's hard to, but again, I'm not saying something better than the other. I'm just saying for myself, I found the genre movies, it's a fun to do, and it's a lot of toys, and you have money and time. But I think it's it's maybe just personally, it's not some movies I would kind of love to do all my life. For me, The English Patient or Talented Mr. Ripley, that's an amazing movie.
Like a movie where you really got a chance to paint.
Paint, but also I think it's all about everything. When I think even goal, not even oh, look at my work. Goal is when everything came together. You know what I mean? That's where the real movie really is. Yeah.
That's interesting. So you're discovered at the Toronto Film Festival, or your producer signs with William Morris, and then you
director,
your director, and you meet David Ayer as your first American filmmaking experience. End of Watch is a little bit of an unconventional movie. What was it like to take on something like that, which to me is a little bit less controlled feeling than your other work?
I mean, I think for me it was purely that's the chance, you got to take it, and and you just gotta embrace it and not fight against it, and actually, again, if you ask about inspiration, the script was written that way, that they use those little camcorders, the language, it's been in the script. So after you read, and it's a great script, 93 pages of non-stop, you can't stop reading that script. It's so emotionally so attached,
and he wrote it too, right?
He wrote it, yeah. So then when you got script like that, it's really about just being smart and pick right people, right tools, and put it all together, So for me, it wasn't really something difficult. I was just happy that David, had a chance to make movie he wanted. And actually, I'm telling you, I just did 14 days movie with Doug Liman. And after
14 days?
14 days, yeah, 1-4 in the desert, where basically
I wonder how many days he shot Swingers in.
I think also something I think that's what he said. I want to do this movie like Swingers. Sometimes actually that you short on your resources and time, it actually brings best out of you. And sometimes you have this gigantic machine next to you, and then it's not necessarily help you to make right decisions. So
it's like trying to turn the Titanic around. Just move so slowly.
Exactly. So I feel it really depends, and as a it's like a mantra a little bit right now, but it all comes from script. If you got a great script, you got everything. It's it's really, that's why I don't think I was ever very, very good in shooting music videos, because was never enough information what's going on, because it's why they're there, what they're doing, what's the light.
Why are they in this warehouse? Why are these chains hanging from the ceiling? Why are the strobe lights strobing?
But then you kind of okay, I just gotta let it go and don't ask too many questions, don't piss off anyone, and just enjoy my lights.
Just make it look cool.
Exactly, yeah. And but I think the older you're getting, the more and more questions like that you ask yourself, because it's just hard not to. It's
you get into the nuance.
If you're really taking seriously what you do.
So when you did End of Watch, had the majority of the work that you'd done up until then been on film?
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah, all the movies I shot on 35 mil. Yeah.
So what was it like embracing not just shooting on video, but shooting on, were they GoPros or were they?
We used Silicon Image. It's the camera which Danny Boyle used before us, and we work.
Are they still around?
I have no idea, to be honest with you. It's not like I think I will use that tool if I need it, but to be honest with you, I'm not this kind of guy who like can talk about technology and being excited about, look, we found this little camera. Or like we built this little thing.
But for that story, it necessitated it.
Oh, absolutely. We built a whole new camera for this story. Actually, we did. We like took apart the whole Silicon Image. We like built a twice smaller version. Put the Velcro on the vest. Or like, for example, for Fury, for like lighting inside of a tank, we built the whole system of a new lights together with Al from Light Ribbon. But it's a fun of this work when you basically have a challenge coming from the script, and then you just figure it out how to make it work. And it's usually very exciting, but like you never really look at it. I at least myself, I never like kind of like, oh, I've built that camera and I did this and that.
Well, it's like, less about the tech though, but it's more about like, so you're someone who comes from celluloid, you're used to shooting on film, and now you're shooting on a digital format, and you're doing it in a way that's not quite, it's not exactly found footagey, but it is kind of like a found footage film.
We just watch a lot of like police videos and watch like, for example, how people cover these days war, like in Afghanistan, they're wearing like GoPros on their helmets.
Yeah.
So then you just like realizing that it doesn't matter, because I think here that's the interesting thing about cinematography in general, that cinematography is not really beautiful pictures. I mean, I mean, like great DPs has their own style, and you gotta fight for your image. You gotta fight for your right to be the artist and use time and money the way you think it should be. But at the end of the day, if the way that movie only look beautiful, you will never see a movie like Celebration or a movie like Idiots or movie like Breaking the Waves, because it's completely anti-cinematography movies, but it's an amazing movies. So that's why I always very open to like, okay, that's chance, like in the Suicide Squad, use big lamps, great cranes, and craft shots. That's this kind of movie. Let's do it. And this opportunity to use small cameras, camcorders, Velcro cameras, let's use it because that's fun. And this opportunity to use absolutely natural light and few bounce board the whole movie and use anamorphic lenses.
Yeah, that's what I was going to ask you. It doesn't look like an especially lit movie. Like it looks like it's not supposed to look lit.
No, it's like, because for me, the cinematographers always a respect. And I think the more I'm doing that kind of my taste is changing, and I start enjoying DPs I never really looked in the past, careful, studied that carefully.
Like who, for instance?
Well, like, I think, for example, everyone realized that like guy like Harry Savides actually created the whole visual look of like from 2010 to this hazy blacks and underexposed look which we saw in the movies, like Bradford Young using Ain't Nobody Saints. It's a Harry Savides sort of a style, and he's never been awarded but he actually had a huge influence even with his music videos with Mark Romanek or Fincher on entire visual sort of a visual world we're even living in right now, because I have not seen too many better music videos since those guys did, you know what I mean? And it's been like 1995.
Those music videos are the best. Like
best, yeah. So that's what I'm saying. And you start like, oh wow, that guy is like, that's the genius, and sort of, but for me, guys like Vittorio Storaro, like those guys, they always been just like, for example, I have not seen the Woody Allen movie yet, which Storaro shot,
Cafe Society.
Yeah, I have not seen, but I saw trailer and I saw that Storaro lighting, which I love, from like beneath the sheltering sky and Last Emperor. That's just like mind blowing, and it's it's hard. It's I think for me, cinematography, it's a fun. It's just like to find that specific look for the movie. That's why I really enjoy actually that all my movies I've done, they look very, very, very different. And I think that's actually a thing I like to do the most, because I think it's fun to be different every time. But at the same time, you watch on a guy like Roger Deakins, who is just like so consistently amazing with any kind of a director he's working with and any kind of a script and any kind of material, that is kind of just mind-blowing. But he is a total sort of like a samurai. He's so dedicated to what he does.
Yeah.
He shot over 80 movies and he shot 3 movies per year. It means has no life, has like seriously just travel from one movie to another. And you know, if you shoot 3 movies a year, that's how it is, you know. And it's such a dedication to the job and profession. It's just amazing. That's why he's a genius and he's who he is. I personally maybe a little bit more of a, I like to try different things and be sort of a more of a, I don't know, as I said, if I had relationship with like certain directors who I'm enjoying to work, I probably should just even less movies than I do, because I felt I personally cannot shoot like, you know, like 5 projects or 3 projects a year. For me, it's physically and emotionally quite tricky, you know, because I always try to find like a new look and then I get not.
Yeah, it sounds like you put a great deal of thought into, you know, all of your work. And
yeah, I think it's just the way I am, you know.
Yeah.
And but I don't think it's something like, you know, amazing or something. I think everyone's very different and it's great, you know.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you know, I sort of get the sense that you're David Ayers guy. Like you work with David Ayers. You've done all 3 of his features.
I think it's not like I think we have just friendship and relationship, and you know, like for example, you know, we've done like Suicide Squad and critics didn't like it, and right now he's doing a different movie, and for me, you know, I have to be with him when it's good times and when it's bad times, and
of course.
when we feel that our relationship is not really bringing a fun anymore, then it's time to move on.
Yeah.
But right now, I know his even next movie he pitched me like, not pitch, like we talk about his next script, and it's an amazing story, I think, because he was thinking about it over several years. It's just an insane script again, and it's like, David, like that's like, why are we not doing it right now? It's like, because I just figured it out. And so it's like, so I think it's fun. And
well, and critics can hate on Suicide Squad all day long. It's probably the highest grossing movie of the year, or one of them.
It is, but for me, it's like one of those painful conversations, because, you know, like I felt we did an amazing work, and it's just like sometimes, you know, it's hard to put a great movie together. It's difficult, especially with so many characters, and you know, I think we did as best as we can. I wish we could do even better, but you know, it's one of those things where you kind of like, you know, watching the movie, you learn and you keep going, and I think, you know.
Well, that's it. I mean, I want to talk about Fury as well.
Yeah.
But before we even do that, since you brought up Suicide Squad, I don't pretend to know what it was like doing the stuff that you were doing in Russia, but I would assume that you had a lot of control over what was going on.
Yeah.
And then something like End of Watch, which was a lower budget studio film, you know, with big stars in it, but still, you know, now you're doing Suicide Squad, which Warner Brothers is really betting the farm on making these DC movies work really well. So, and I don't know how much of this you can answer, but how much is the corporate influence getting into what you're doing?
Well, I mean, one of their advantages when you work with your friend director, that's actually you get quite protected by director, at least like I want to say about David, that I always feel very sort of secure with him, because he trusts me, and I know, and he knows that I work my, you know, I will work very, very hard, and I will deliver the best I can. I cannot say that it was very complicated, because I've done, you know, like a musical in Russia, and I've done pretty big commercials. So scale is not something really which is difficult, because reality is you just approach it with a very simple system. You still, it can be huge system, it can be lots of lights, tremendous amount of lights, but the idea is like that they do very simple things, like either a key light or back light or front light or top light or whatever you think.
But like, are there like executives who are sitting in Video Village looking at every shot?
You know what? I'll be honest with you. I am really enjoying working in America, and I think producers here, yes, they're tough. They're very like, you know, money orientated, and sort of their job protect studio money and deliver. But you know, I always get along very well with them, and I think they're very hardworking, beautiful people who at the end of the day also want to make a great movie. At least maybe I just was lucky, but like on Suicide Squad, we got Charles Rowan, Richard Sackle, and Colin Wilson, who've done like Avatar and stuff. And those people, they don't sleep. They work like 24 hours, and and they really want to help, and you just have to understand that you're also responsible for certain things. And if you understand that, then you just put your creativity in the right way, and you actually get paid to be creative. But it also
that's the dream.
And also you get paid to drive the bus as smooth as possible to the end as a DP, with so many big huge film stars. But reality is, if you understand that and you find your own thing you want to explore, and that's actually usually a fun trip. So physically it was very sort of a tricky, of course, because it was, huge days, huge setups, big like helicopters and all that stuff. But at the end of the day, it was a lot of fun as well, because cast was amazing. I had a lot of support from them, and it was fun. And studio, they care and they comment about things, but if you think that you believe in the things, it's like, it has to be, I think, in my opinion, the conflict has to be like about such a black and white things. That's I think it's either comes later in post, but at least on the shoot, like, I never really experienced that much of a trouble. And I always take in the movie, that's why I'm trying to shoot commercials as much as I can, because I always want to try to keep in my mind the thing is like, okay guys, this is what I do and this is what I think is right, and if you think is wrong, there is 150 DPs who will die to get this job. And I'm happy to step out, because like, I'm not gonna have fun to making it, and you're not gonna have fun to work with me if I'm not excited about it. So that's why I try to keep myself financially as independent as only possible, and not like have a kind of like simple life in a way, so I can make those choices and I can feel free. Because I think that's a tricky part when you start shoot movies just for making money as a cinematographer, because then you kind of get stuck into other things, and that's actually hard, because then you're not really honest with yourself till the very end. And I think that's where trouble starts. And if you're very honest, everybody feels that, and even film stars feels that you're passionate about it, and and you get the whole support.
That's cool. But like, when you're working on a movie like that, like, I guess, I don't know, I have so many questions. I feel like I could do a whole thing just about working, not on Suicide Squad in particular, but just a movie of that size with that many big stars in it, and just the way that you have to move around. Like, how long of a shoot was it?
Well, you just plan. It's like we shot over 86 days, which is not really much for the size of the movie. We have it's a huge movie. Second unit around like 30 days. But again, like, I got an amazing team, great gaffer Rick Thomas. We shot 3 movies together already, and like, we know each other. And I love to work with the same people over and over again. We have pretty good Canadian crew, and I also have Josh, second unit DP, and Guy Norris, second unit director, who actually have done Fury Road, Mad Max. So, like, when you work with this level of professionals, that's like amazing, like, and especially, you have to understand, for me, like, I'm coming from Russia, whereas like, the film business and the film industry is not as advanced as in the United States. So for me, it's like, literally, I was like playing with a ball made of stone, and I suddenly get a real basketball, so for me, that's perfect. Like, you're learning on a very bad car, which is barely driving, and then you jump in the industry where everything just works like a Swiss clock. So
I guess one of the things I always wonder about is, like, I remember reading an interview with Bill Pope about one of the Spider-Man movies that he'd done. And he was saying that there were so many units going simultaneously that a lot of his job became kind of just quality control and touching base with the units.
It's management.
And it was management, and it was less about like him with a camera on his shoulder, like, making a movie.
Well, I think that's why you should be careful and not make too many movies like that. There's nothing wrong to make these movies, especially I think these days. Like, I talk with Oliver Stapleton in Camera Image, and it was very funny, actually. It was about to start Suicide Squad, and I told him, like, what do you think? Should I, like, what is, like, he said, as director, you work with you, of course you should do it. I said, yeah, but I don't feel really like that it's kind of the movies I want to do and stuff. He said, no, but, and actually Dion Beebe told me the same thing. He said, no, you got to make one of those movies once in a while, not all constantly, but once in a while, because it really puts your sort of a management and craft and sensibility for lighting and the scale on a different level.
That makes sense.
And it really helps you to be better than you are. And to be honest with you, I finished Suicide Squad. After that, I had this Jason Hole movie, little drama for DreamWorks, and I was operating camera. I didn't have any. Later, we had B camera also running because studio wanted a little more coverage, and they were worried that Jason's, for first time direct, we need more coverage. But actually, I felt very happy. I felt like, wow, that's amazing. Just me, camera, and like 4 electricians. That's perfect. So it's great. But at the same time, you know, sometimes you do a lot of those dramas, independent movies, and then you understand you work hard, but movies is just not great, you know, and you basically suffering, and you going through this pain, constant pain of not enough this, not enough that, not enough. So you like, that's why I think that's why everything. I think Matthew Lebedik actually changed everything, because he was working Black Swan and he was doing Iron Man, and people realized like, oh, that's not anymore like a stamp of that he doesn't have taste or something. It's just the way the industry these days right now, because all this 30, 40, 60 million dollars movies, which been back in the 90s and 80s and 70s, great movies like Casino, you need money to make all those movies, you know. They're all gone.
I know.
And they're not exist anymore. You either have like 15 at the most $20 million dramas with a great cast, or you have 180 Suicide Squad, and nothing in between. Even actors, look at Mark Ruffalo, or you know, all these great actors, dramatic actors, they all in PTA movie, but next year then Guardians of the Galaxy or something. You know, because that's the way the industry these days right now. So that's why I think you know, there's nothing bad about it at all. And I think actually I heard just recently that Rachel Morrison, who is like an amazing cinematographer, she's doing a Black Panther for Marvel, you know.
Oh, cool.
And she just been famous for like sort of a more Indian, low budget kind of dramas, which she done brilliantly. So, and I think that's
I feel like that's what's happening with directors too. Is it's like you make one independent film people have heard of, and then you're making Jurassic Park.
Because it's tough, you know. Life costs money, and like these guys, they want to develop their own projects. And I think again, like Chris Nolan did that thing when he like, okay, guys, I'm gonna shoot 3 movies about Batman, and then I'm gonna do Interstellar, my passion project. But the passion project cost $180 million. Because reality is, these days, if you don't make for studio $1 billion, you can't make any, you know what I mean? It's like, it's the way the world is right now.
I hope that changes. I always think about like when Darren Aronofsky's first film, you know, Mehdi Libatik's first film, Pi. I don't know. Actually, I don't know if that's Mehdi Libatik's first film. But anyway, when that came out, that was considered an art house success. You know how much money it made theatrically? Like $3 million. But they bought it for $1 million, so that was like they tripled their investment.
No, I think it still exists, and you know, the Sundance. But what I'm saying is, I think why directors, even great directors, do that, it's really hard to be along in that system where you have to constantly ask for money, have to ask constantly goes your script and beg for money. That's for Justin Kurzel is an amazing director, director. He just did this big movie with Fassbinder, Assassin's Creed, and it's a reason, because that movie gonna make a lot of money, and you know, and after that he'll be able to do what he wanted to do. You know, small movie, and I think that's actually fair enough. You know, so I think that's our day's reality, and we gotta accept it, and you know, don't put stamps on people. You know what I mean? That's the thing.
Let's talk a bit about Fury, which is another David Ayer film, and then I'd love to talk about your other films. So David Ayer makes End of Watch, and his next thing is Fury. Now, it's such a different movie. Frankly, it's such a different. Like, if I look at those 3 as a trilogy of the, you know, your collaborations with him, they're all so different. It would be even hard for me to realize that they were the same people making them.
Well, I think because he also kind of likes to explore different things, and I think, like this movie we're doing right now in prep, it calls Bright, and it's in LA, and it's sort of a LAPD story again, but it's not actually a LAPD story. It's like a crazy script, but I think, I don't know really, I think he just writes sometimes. He just sit down and write a script, you know what I mean?
Just inspired.
Because he's definitely likes he's a big fan of military, and he's a big fan of like sort of all this culture, and he collects some things, and it's who he is. And for me, you know, it's great that he can write stories about it. So, and The Fury was an amazing movie, because the budget was like 60 million, and which is, you know, for period movie we shot in London. I was very lucky that he basically called me and said, hey, you want to do it? For me, it was like, wow, it's a Brad Pitt movie, you know what I mean? It was like completely mind-blowing, but at the same time it was so much fun, and the movie turned out great, and you know, it's really, I don't know, I feel like the funny thing is like you can handle any scale and any sort of a technical task if you feel like you and your director together. And that's what this like The Revenant, it's completely understandable how it's all happened, because there's such a chemistry between director and DP, and that's like it's a heart beating heart, which is moving the whole vehicle into this madness, and everybody's like, oh my god, and then they're like landing, or like Birdman, something completely crazy, or like what Matthew Leibovitz does, like Black Swan. Like I heard that people just when studios were reading that script, and they're like, "Oh, what is this? Like, how this gonna make money?" And it made like $700 million.
That's Aronofsky's best film, in my opinion.
I think so too. And that's amazing. And I think that's what it's all about the script and the chemistry between you and your director, and you just go for it, and it's usually turns out very well.
Cool. So let's talk about, just really quickly, let's wrap up and talk about some of the other things that you have going on. So you were talking about the Doug Liman movie. So Doug Liman, again, like, serious name director who really puts a specific stamp on his work. Like his work has a real stamp. What was collaborating with him like for you, if you're allowed to talk?
Well, for me,
it's weird. I feel like I'm not supposed to say anything because the movie hasn't come out yet. But
but it's like, I'm not going to tell what's the movie about. I'm just going to tell how was the relationship with a brilliant director, Doug Liman. It was absolutely amazing, because I felt Doug, he's one of those guys who is like hiring a person to be creative and listen to him. For him, that's the most important part. So he hiring you, and he say, okay, I pick you for some reason, like whatever reason he had, and I think you're talented, and what I want to see from you, it's your heart and your soul into the project, and I want you to be passionate about it. And as soon as he sees that you are passionate about it and you really care and you propose things and you try to be as involved as possible with every little detail, and you don't sleep about it, and you wake up in the night, it's like, I got this idea about this shot, then he's happy. And that's why I enjoyed work with him, because I felt like after a couple days when we kind of get more shorthanded, I felt like we get something. I start really feeling what he wants, and for me it's a great like fun working with a director when I understand that we kind of connected with some invisible pipe or something, where I can really read his mind about ideas and thoughts. And great thing about Doug, like with every good director, sometimes, okay, I know what he wants, I wanted this shot, and then later like, no, it's not what I want. And you're like, oh, what do you want? And then he says something, he's like, shit, that's much more smarter than what I thought. So that's the thing. And then you're saying why he's a director.
But that goes both ways too. Don't you like bring ideas to the table that he's like, oh wow, like every DP
I don't think so, because I think my ideas, they're always visual, and I think that's great, that's my job. But at the same time, I think actually the difference between great directors and not great directors, not, let's say, great directors and good directors, let's not say no one great. I mean, that's actually great directors, they have this talent of like just like boom, like put one thing, one idea, one thought, and you realize that you will never, if you will sit the whole nights by yourself with a drink, you will never even come up with an idea like that.
But I think that it works the other way too with DPs. I've seen it a million times where the director gives the DP a very specific idea of a shot or something like that. They go away, the DP's working with the body doubles or stand-ins or whatever, and then the director comes back and the DP has made the exact shot, but it's completely cooler and different than what the director had imagined.
Right.
Or they've figured out a way to be like, oh, okay, well, you've got this shot and that shot, but if you put the camera here, you can get them both, and it's a more dynamic composition or whatever.
Well, that's how we work with Dave. We always like, okay, I bring him out with some short idea, and he's like, not like it, but I feel like that's the way it should be. In a way,
it's a collaboration,
but at the same time, I think that's for me the fun part as a DP, and I think as actors as well, they like to feel, and I myself like to feel that in certain ways, like I still get not like control, but I still get like, I still feel that there's a mastermind, you know what I mean, to set up the tone, because it's like an orchestra, you still have to get a conductor
of course,
and I think that's why I loved about working with Doug, that I did feel that even if he feels like he's not really like sort of saying anything, or he's not like, okay, do this or that, he's like leaving a question mark about something. But as soon as he feels that something goes definitely wrong, not necessarily right, but definitely wrong, he's definitely in it to say, no, that's like the other way. And that's, for me, that's actually what I need. I don't need more than that, because then I can help and figure out and get some proposals,
Cool. Well, thank you so much for coming out and talking to us.
I hope yeah, I hope it will work.
It'll be great. No, your perspective is fascinating, and I love the clarity that you have on the collaborative process on how you like to work with directors. And also, I have to think that school that you went to, like, it gave you a depth of knowledge that's pretty inspirational, I think.
Yeah, it's probably, I don't know.
So maybe we'll get more people to apply to that school. All right, well, thank you.
They only teach in Russian, so that's the tricky part.
Well, just like have Google Translate on all day.
No, I think actually lots film school in Poland, that's kind of like a cool place also to check it out. I think if people want to learn cinematography in particular, I think that the Polish.
Why is it that the Polish have such like the best cinematography? Seriously.
Well, I personally think that they took a lot from Soviet Union. I'll be honest with you. Maybe because I'm Russian. I think the whole Eastern European kind of thing, like Hungary and Poland, and I'm sure that if it wouldn't be Metal Curtain, like a lot of great DPs would be in Hollywood. It just, the reality is like they never really get a chance even to be like they've been completely hidden, so
it's weird how history intervenes.
Yeah, like
in that
Sergei Rusevsky, who shot Krills Are Flying on Soy Cuba. I mean, like if you ask Inurito or Chivo, they definitely say the Soy Cuba is in the masterpiece.
Yeah.
So I think that's an example.
Interesting. Well, thank you so much for coming out.
You're welcome.
All right, so that was Roman Vas'yanov as edited by Mike Willbanks.
Thank you, Mike. This is I hope the beginning of a long, beautiful relationship. All right, so Ben, who is the war story by this week?
The war story is, like, I think one of my favorite guests that we've gotten on here. You ready? Everybody ready? Drum roll. Future me, put a drum roll in here as a sound effect. Okay, there we go. I like that drum roll. That sounds. Oh, that's a good drum roll. Oh, that's good. Rodney Charters. That's right, Rodney Charters. The Rodney Charters. Holy crap, Rodney Charters is on our show.
ASC Lifetime Achievement Award winner. Yeah, Rodney Charters, who, you and I bonded and met basically in some ways because of Rodney Charters. I would come over to your house on Monday nights to watch 24.
Yeah, and 24 I think changed television, and I don't think he gets his due. I think almost every show on television today is kind of a ripoff of 24.
Yeah, a lot of shows really are. 24 was incredibly innovative when it came to look and storytelling and simultaneous cross-cutting back and forth between complex storylines and characters. It was revolutionary.
And I don't want to ruin it, but the interview with Rodney Charters is bananas. That guy, I could just sit there and listen to him all day long. He's so brilliant and he has crazy stories. Just from his childhood and stuff that don't even have to do with cinematography, and you're like, but somehow this informs this guy. There's like a visceralness to the work that he does that's just like so many steps beyond anything.
It's fascinating. It's totally fascinating. We have to have him on again.
Yeah,
he's got to do a part 2.
Yeah, we had him for like a limited amount of time, and we had to cut it off short. And I was like, God damn it, I want to talk to you for the next 6 years.
So that's our worst story.
We should just start a regular feature on the podcast called Story Time with Rodney Charters, where he just tells like a story from his childhood, and we play like creepy calliope music in the background. I think there's money in that.
I'd listen. I really would. I would absolutely listen to that.
And now, war stories.
Once I was crossing Russia in '68 on a train, and there was a klutch lady who was in charge of the peat moss burner that kept the carriage hot. She said, whatever you do, lock your compartment. They would stop at a station in the middle of the night and people would get on. And I forgot one night, and these 2 guys came into my carriage, and I kid you not, they had never washed in their lives. And as they began to peel off layers of clothing, because they were standing in the snow outside in this, waiting for the train, I just almost vomited. I went out and I said to her, I was like gesturing and so on, and eventually she took pity on me and she threw them out. It was this loud thing, and she threw them out. But this is the stuff that sometimes happens in life. My experience in Siberia gave me an understanding of how painfully powerful personal hygiene can be. Fundamentally, you're the king on the stage. There is a director, but often the director's off doing other things, and you're the one person on set that everybody looks to for direction. And so how you behave yourself on set and how well you encourage support as a team leader is a fundamental part of being a cinematographer. You can't employ people and not expect them to be excited to be there, want to contribute, and feel proud of being part of that family. So you need to elicit that kind of level of understanding. Apropos of this, I once had an issue where somebody on my immediate camera team was not washing as often as they should have. I won't name names, I won't name cities, and the rest of the team came to me and said, look, we cannot work with this person on the camera truck. It's even bad in the set. You have to say something. Cinematographers have once you give up operating, you move away from the immediate team to a certain extent. So I wasn't personally as offended by this person, but I had moments, little whiffs, and they came to me. First AC came to me and said, look, Rodney, you have to say something. We believe we can't say anything and still continue to work with her. It has to come from a higher level. I actually went to the camera and stood there for a little bit and said, okay, I have to deal with this. Because I was removed at the monitors. I wasn't quite... and so I had to grit my teeth and, pluck my courage up. And I actually bought in a little care package of soap and shampoo. And I handed it to this person and said, look, please, for the sake of my team, or all of us, please take a little time in the morning and perform ablutions before you come in. It was partly a cultural thing. We're not from the same country. And so I understood that. This particular individual made an effort, and gradually it improved. And we thanked this person, and they continued to work in the industry and went on to better and greater things.
And now, short ends.
All right, so that was Rodney Charters' amazing war story.
It certainly was. And Ben, we've reached that time. That time once again, or maybe, I don't know if it's your favorite time, but it's certainly that time where we get to blab about whatever our obsession of the week is our short ends section. So, So Ben, I've got a short end this week about a television show. Well, I'd call it a TV show, but it's on Amazon. It's a series, and you can watch the entire season, and it's called Patriot. And Patriot is fantastic. It's a great series. I would say that it harkens in some ways to the sort of unsettling feelings that you get from like watching a Mr. Robot. It's not a Mr. Robot. It's not trying to be that sort of show. It's essentially a spy thriller about a spy who's actually not a great spy. He's okay, but he's not great. It's got some people in it you'll recognize, like Kurtwood Smith, the gentleman who played John Locke on Lost.
Oh, yeah.
So
Terry O'Quinn, right?
Terry O'Quinn. And the lead is actually a Kiwi, but I'd never seen him in anything before.
A New Zealander or an actual Kiwi?
It is a New Zealander.
That would be groundbreaking television if they had like an actual like green kiwi fruit.
You knew what I was talking about. His name is Michael Dorman. So, and then actually Michael Chernus is also in it. So you might recognize him. He's been in some other stuff. But anyway, Patriot looks to be shot anamorphic 16:9. I'm not sure what lenses they use, but it's a really, really cool look.
Wait, anamorphic. So how do you, what?
Okay, so typically anamorphic lenses are used for that extreme widescreen field of view. Not this time. It looks like anamorphic lenses, and I'm piecing it together from some of the telltale signs of anamorphic lenses, but they're cropping the edges. So that means while they're framing the whole thing for 16:9, but they're getting all the benefits of the 240. It is a possibility that they're using the Hawk 1.3 squeeze lenses, which do give you, a 240 image and a 16:9 sensor. I don't know which method they're using, but regardless, they are reframing it for 16:9? I know I just lost like all of our audience here, but basically,
No, I'm nerdy enough to kind of follow that.
it fills the screen. You don't have, letterboxing on your 16:9 HD TV. It's a very, very cool
But
look.
you're seeing that anamorphic, bloomy, out of focus, kind of elliptical bokeh, right?
Exactly. And you're also seeing a little bit more, noise / grain structure, because now you're using a smaller section of the imaging sensor. You're blowing it up essentially a little bit.
Do you know what camera they shoot it on?
Actually, I don't. I don't know what it is, but it's a great look. But beyond the look, it's a wonderful show. I think you'd really enjoy the show.
And who's the DP?
The DP is Jim Whittaker, who shot almost all of the episodes, and it actually looks like another Whittaker. I'm going to guess maybe his wife. I'm not sure. Looks like shot 2 episodes as well. So that's kind of cool.
Could be his wife, could be a sister, could be a weird coincidence.
It just happens to be that...
Whittakers, if you are listening to us now, call us up and we'll put you on the show.
Yeah, Jim Whittaker and Nicole Hirsch Whittaker. So, I don't know. They work together. Awesome.
Neat. And they're both DPs.
Then they are. They're both DPs. So, Ben, what is your short end this week?
My short end is Shout Factory, which is a company that goes back and remasters older movies. Some of them are pretty old. And I recently picked up 2 movies. Like, a lot of times I'll see a movie on Blu-ray. I don't buy Blu-rays like I bought DVDs. I think most people, that's the same thing. Like, I would buy a DVD because it's like, oh, cool, Turner and Hooch. Whenever I need Turner and Hooch, I know it's nearby. And now it's like when it with
wait a second. you of all the movies you could have gone to like the 1980s soundtrack movie of like the 1980s Queen soundtrack of like Flash Gordon, but you went to Turner and Hooch.
I did because I think that's a landmark film. What's wrong with Turner and Hooch? Anyway,
I just, of all the movies you could have pulled out Close Encounters. You could have pulled out.
That's true. Well, I was trying
Raising Arizona.
I was trying intentionally to pull out a movie that like maybe you liked, but wasn't like a must-own kind of a thing. But I recently picked up 2 movies that Shout Factory, actually their horror sub-imprint, I don't know what you would call it, which is called Scream Factory. They re-released lots of movies. 2 of the ones I picked up were John Carpenter's The Thing and David Cronenberg's Dead Ringers. So The Thing, which is shot by Dean Cundy, who, as you just told me, won a Lifetime Achievement Award from the ASC. So what's cool about Shout Factory is they go back to the original elements, and when possible, they bring in the original DP or director or somebody, rescan the stuff at least 2K for an HD release. And so watching The Thing, which is a movie that I have probably seen hundreds of times in my life, it was like seeing it for the first time. It was beautiful. And Dead Ringers, which was shot by Peter Shusitsky, who shoots a lot of Cronenberg's movies, also shot like The Empire Strikes Back. That movie, rewatching it, I didn't realize what a huge influence Dead Ringers had been on me in my early film school days, in my adolescence, in thinking about what made film compelling. And the movie holds up brilliantly, but I think that everybody should check out Shout Factory if you have a Blu-ray player. Their only real competitor in how much they love movies would be like Criterion.
Wow, that's impressive.
Yeah, as a genre fan, you're going to find all kinds of stuff. Like Stuart Gordon gave me a Shout Factory Blu-ray of Robot Jocks, which is, a super fun, wacky giant robots fighting movie that he made in the early 90s. And it's like, who else is going to release something like that? Hopefully it finds a new audience, and the films just look as amazing as you can they look as amazing as they're ever going to look on home video. Robot Jocks.
That's like a seminal work of giant fighting robots, which, like, how many, wasn't there that Hugh Jackman movie where they did the fighting robots, and then Pacific Rim?
Okay. So the Hugh Jackman one, which is called Real Steel, is normal sized, like human sized fighting robots.
Sorry, I'm not the connoisseur.
And then
fighting robots.
Pacific Rim is
giant robots.
Is again giant robots. And in fact, I don't want to get into too much ephemera here, but somebody's made a YouTube video where they do side by side Robot Jocks and Pacific Rim, and by the time the video's over, you'll be like, wow, Pacific Rim was, let's just diplomatically say, extremely influenced by Robot Jocks.
Wow. Okay. Gotcha.
So
I fantastic.
Don't hate on the robot jocks.
I'm not hating on the robot jocks.
or on Stuart Gordon. The guy's my hero.
I didn't say anything derogatory about Stuart or robot jocks.
Okay.
I was just like, it's a subgenre unto itself now.
It is
the fighting robots.
Robot jocks is pretty awesome, and I bet most people, if I put them in front of robot jocks, they would watch it and they would very much enjoy it.
Ben, I think that is about all the time we have this week. On that note of giant fighting robots.
So firstly, we want to again thank Mike Willbanks for coming on board as our editor, and we'd like to plug his website, which is
lumospictures.com.
So go to lumospictures.com, give Mike Willbanks some love, tell him that you appreciate his help in getting the Cinematography Podcast going, and then additionally, we would, as always, like to thank Kays Alatractchi. You can find his music at www.musicbykays.com. Hire Kays to do your next thing, or frankly, one thing that most people don't know about Kays, because he's a well-known composer, he's actually pretty good with visual effects.
Yeah, that's true. He's pretty darn good.
He's a talented fella.
Multi-talented guy.
So, Illya, where can people find you?
They can find me at Hot Rod Cameras. You can also find me at camnoir.com, which is the home of the Cinematography Podcast, and on all various forms of social media. There's not too many Illya Friedmans out there, so I'm pretty easily searchable.
All right. Weirdly, there's a few Ben Rocks out there, and one day I want to have a convention or something.
So the four of you will get together. And,
something like that. Yeah, it won't really be a convention. It'll just be like four of us at Denny's. Trying to confuse somebody with when we give them our credit cards. We'd like to split this bill 4 ways, please. So you can find me at Neptune Salad on Twitter, at Benjamin_Rock on Instagram, and at benrockonline.com. You can learn everything you needed to know about me, which really probably isn't that much, but knock yourself silly.
I think this concludes our broadcast day.
All right. Thank you, and we will see you back here for episode 14 of the Cinematography Podcast featuring Rodney Charters.
This has been the Cinematography Podcast, presented by Hot Rod Cameras. Find your next camera, lens, or accessory on the web at hotrodcameras.com. Don't forget to subscribe to our show on iTunes and connect with us on Facebook and Twitter. Thanks for listening.